Hello everyone, welcome to my top 10 reasons why Skyrim wasn't as good as everyone thought. Before I begin, I need to stress, I do not dislike Skyrim. Skyrim was the first real console PC gaming experience that I had, and I loved it so much. I still love the game, and it's a great game by all definitions. This video is to simply point out some of the reasons why Skyrim wasn't quite as good as reviews gave it, and as good as fans raved over it. Obviously, this whole video is subjective, and if you don't like my opinions, please watch until the end and maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. There are a lot of points that I've been thinking of, especially after playing games like Dark Souls, Kingdoms of Amalur, The Witcher series, and Monster Hunter. And I know I can't avoid the hate of diehard fans in the game in the comments section, but for all the reasonable people out there, please understand that these are merely things that could have been better in Skyrim. And please keep in mind, I play on a computer, and I know most of these problems are fixed with mods, but I want to talk about vanilla Skyrim and the experience of console players. I want to start by saying, I think people usually give Bethesda a pass. Bethesda makes incredible games, don't get me wrong, but their games are often overhyped and are given a pass for the things they don't excel in because it's a Bethesda game. Skyrim might have been the most overhyped game of the generation, much like Fallout 4 was. That hype over the game clouded the eyes of reviewers who had not spent long enough with the game to see it for what it was. A massive open-world game that wasn't up to par. The first thing that I want to talk about is the combat in the game. The Witcher is a game where you have to be patient in combat, seize moments, and retreat. Dark Souls is a game where you have to memorize enemy patterns and prepare well in order to effectively thrive. The Monster Hunter series is yet another game where you spend much of your time evading around the monster, waiting for the time to strike. In Skyrim, you just kind of run at stuff and spam the attack button over and over. That is literally the entire combat. You spam your attack button until they die. Well, that's actually how all melee weapons work. Ranged weapons are a little bit different. You spam your bow and aim at slow-moving targets until they die. I would say being a mage is the least brainless out of all the combat methods, since you have to aim, manage your mana, and generally make use out of several different spells at once to be effective in combat without taking advantage of broken game mechanics. One of my main problems that Skyrim has is its lack of any kind of evasion methods. The game doesn't have a way to roll or dodge out of the way of attacks. If you want to dodge an attack, you simply walk backwards and hope you did it fast enough. That's pretty basic. If you look at any other game in this genre, they all have rolls. Before you take to the comments to exclaim that there is a way to roll, it's a perk. You're right, but it's a perk. This should be a base game control, not something you unlock from the stealth tree so you can sneak around better. Sneaking around is another huge sin on Skyrim's part. The enemies are completely stupid and you can walk in front of them and they often won't see you. The stealth mechanic simply isn't done well enough for a AAA title. My next issue with Skyrim is the way that the game bragged about its procedurally generated quests. I'm probably asking too much from the developers, but the procedurally generated quests the game had were pathetic. All of them were fetch quests, kill quests, just bland, mundane quests a toddler could complete, especially with the simple combat mechanics. Even past the procedurally generated quests, the normal quests often simply are not interesting. Quantity does not equal quality. Just because the game has endless quests to complete does not make it good or make the quests good. Most of the quests in the game change very little. Even one of the biggest quest lines you can do, the Civil War, ends up being mostly pointless. Let's pretend for a minute that we side with the Stormcloaks and win the Civil War. All that changes is Stormcloaks are in more cities, and there are a few places in the game with damaged buildings. After completing storyline quests, I found myself looking up how to start all of the Daedric quests, since those are the most interesting quests in the game. Even the faction quests like the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood become boring after a while and feel like a chore. Go out, easily kill this person, return for your reward. Go out, easily steal this item, return for your reward. The boring quest leads to another boring aspect of the game, the dungeons. Most of the dungeons, caves, etc. I went into look nearly identical to the previous. Sure, there are many which still have a creative design to them, and there were some very memorable quests in dungeons. For the most part though, walking through the same bandit cave, Draugr tomb, and Dwemer dungeon became a tedious, boring task. The dungeons lead to yet another problem in the game, a lack of interesting items. Rare artifacts you can find hidden deep inside of dungeons after spending 2 hours going on quest after quest and clearing dungeon after dungeon, only to find the rare artifact that is your reward is an everyday sword with a fire enchantment on it. In fact, If you spend an hour farming at the forge and take advantage of the bad skill tree that is smithing, you can make some of the best armors in the game right at the beginning. You know, I have some other Skyrim videos where I'm a level 30 with Daedric armor and people accuse me of cheating them into the game. If you take the time, you can get smithing to level 100 fairly easily, though it's very boring. Don't get me started on the dagger exploit that used to be in the game. If you know where to look, it's a very simple task to get enough Daedric hearts to get Daedric armor quickly in the game. Furthermore, though perhaps this bit belongs in the combat complaint earlier in the video, the weapons that are in the game are all boring. The weapons are not diverse enough or unique in gameplay, and as I stated before, all melee weapons are the same. You run forward and spam left click. Whether you're using a huge hammer or daggers, there is no skill, it's all the same. Speaking of boring, let's talk about the skill tree. Skyrim's skill tree is one of the worst I have ever seen. I love skill trees. Nothing makes me happier than playing games like Kingdoms of Amalur, Torchlight 2, and Diablo where I can get all kinds of new abilities and passives in the skill tree. Take the one-handed skill tree for example. There is a grand total of 1 perk that changes up the gameplay. All it adds is a one-handed power attack while sprinting that deals more damage. All of the other perks in this tree are completely boring. For the most part, they just add damage to your weapons. None of the other perks add abilities or change the way that you play the game, and many of the skill trees are similar to this. They merely make the base mechanics of the game slightly more effective. Even when taking a look at some of the mage trees, the highest level perk in destruction magic makes spells cost less magicka. It doesn't give you the ultimate spell. It doesn't make you deal double damage as a reward for farming enemies for hours to reach this level. It simply lets you do the spell longer. This leads me to another point. Skyrim is simply too easy. It doesn't matter what difficulty you play on, the game is too easy. It's too easy to get plenty of money, to find health and mana potions everywhere you look. Even mages who have never stolen a thing in the game before can simply steal off of shop shelves. This point is part of what makes the combat so horrific. It doesn't matter that the best perk in destruction magic makes your spells cost half the magicka when you can simply pause during a fight, drink a mana potion, and instantly regain your mana and continue fighting. When you look at games like Dark Souls, Witcher, and Monster Hunter, they all had a sacrifice for using a health potion. In Witcher, you could eat food anytime during combat, but it still took time to regain the health. In Dark Souls and Monster Hunter, you have a very limited supply of potions to use, and they took several seconds to use. You would have to run out of combat while the monster was focused on someone else, or duck behind cover and use those few precious seconds to drink your potions to regain your health. In Skyrim, if you get low on health, simply pause the game, drink yourself back to perfect health, and continue on with the fight. The game isn't difficult when you can simply pause in the middle of brainless combat to drink one of your 60 health potions that you can commonly find all over the world. Skyrim has no high stakes, it has no punishment for dying, and merely conditions you to save obsessively so you have something to reload to when you do manage to somehow die. All of the characters in the game are completely two-dimensional. There are no complex characters in Skyrim, they all belong to one political side of an issue or the other. The reason for this is to inspire political confusion within the gamer and truly question their beliefs and values. The overarching issue with the two-dimensional characters is bad writing. The main storyline is cliché after cliché, and it doesn't end in an interesting or memorable way, and the Dragonborn DLC suffers from this as well. There are no memorable lines or scenes, the storyline of the game is not well written at all, and it is simply not rewarding to complete. While the decision to make all of the characters two-dimensional works for the idea of making gamers choose whether they are front or back, or left or right, I wish some of the characters were a bit more complex. The followers in the game suffer dearly in this category as well. Their followers have no interactions, they aren't interesting, they're merely meat sponges to distract enemies while you shoot them from a distance while you play your OP heavy armor sneak bow Khajiit character. The entirety of the Hearthfire DLC suffers from this as well. Your wife, your kids, your house, they don't really do anything. They are there to add playtime, and they are the epitome of Skyrim. They are an illusion that there is more to do in the game than there actually is. The house in the Hearthfire DLC is just a money pit and a time haul. You pour all of your money into it, you spend so much time buying up and gathering materials, and nothing substantial comes of it. Sure, you have kind of a cool house and a wife and children with no interactions or true character, but How often do you sit in your house to admire your work in lieu of running around completing quests? Finally, the last reason why Skyrim simply wasn't as good as you thought was the enemies. I think probably 85% of the time that you spent fighting enemies in vanilla Skyrim was fighting undead, like Draugr and skeletons, bandits, which do include Forsworn, Falmer, and Dwemer contraptions. After they added the Dawnguard DLC, you do have battles with the random vampire a bit more frequently, and after the Dragonborn DLC, you have those battles with the random Mirak followers sometimes, but other than that, the game is mostly stale. You'll find those big spiders a lot, and you'll fight some dragons, but for the vast majority of the time, you will spend fighting undead, bandits, Falmer, and Dwemer contraptions. Dragons might be one of the only enemies that's even slightly fun to fight, because first, it's a dragon, and second, they can fly around before they land. While the dragon is flying, you are engaged in an intense bow and arrow fight while you chase it across the town to defend the people, and then as soon as it lands, you begin your left-click spam. The game isn't difficult, and the fault belongs with the combat, the enemies, and the game itself. Before you engage in your rant about how Skyrim drastically changed the gaming world in my comments section, I want you to know I think you're right. The game did change the gaming world. The game was incredible. But when you look past the name Bethesda and the hype that was Skyrim, the game wasn't quite as good as you thought. Perhaps for many it's nostalgia, for many it's the huge open world with the stories. But when you look at the combat, the quests, the areas, the skill trees, the way the characters behave, the enemies, and just how the game is generally easy despite the difficulty you play on, I hope you'll see where I'm coming from. Once again, please understand I do not dislike Skyrim. I have hundreds of hours put into Skyrim. I have a whole series on my channel based on how much I geek out over the Elder Scrolls lore. I just wanted to make this video for a long time because I don't think Skyrim is quite as good a game as many people believe. Thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.